Hi guys, so today is Tuesday, December the 15th, and before we get going on today's agenda and on today's task, I just wanted to touch base with those of y'all that are home. From today's lesson, or from Monday's lesson, we went over Brad Paisley's song American Saturday Night, so this was text analysis entry number one, and the lyrics were on the next slide. The goals and targets, make sure that you've updated your packets because the next couple of days we're going to be talking about what soundness of reasoning is, what relevance and irrelevance really means and how we use them appropriately, and then what sufficient means, because sufficient means to have enough of something. To be good at arguing or making a point valid or a claim valid, you have to have soundness. It needs to be relevant in order to be a sufficient argument. All of those definitions are on the next slide. You should be putting those in your notebooks, and this note page you'll have a copy of to paste in your notebooks when you return to school. Okay, so all this goes in your notebooks. Then with ethnocentrism and 100% American, we just got started on those on Monday. So if you started reading ethnocentrism, you're right on the dot. Today, your Tuesday goal is going to be answering the questions on both those articles, which have been uploaded in Schoology. So if you were to look here in Schoology, you go to Tuesday's lesson, you'll see here that once you complete reading both of those articles, you should answer these questions here. Now, here in class, what we've been working on is T4ing or annotating in the text as we read. That's what I want you to make sure you're trying to do at home. If you can print these articles, super. If you cannot, the expectation would be just that you can answer the questions with evidence. Okay, so that was Monday's assignment. We got started there. Today, here we go. I'm going to be reading for you 10 myths about immigration. This is going to be your text analysis for the day, so make sure you put this in entry number 2. And then you are going to finish up, as I just told you, ethnocentrism and 100% American and answer those questions in Schoology. Here we go. As you respond to today's text, guys, I want you to think about what your thoughts are on these particular myths. What did you think of them before you realized that they were untrue? How do you relate to any of these things? Have you ever believed any of them before? Why do you think that people also tend to believe in these things, especially just by word of mouth? And last but not least, how is it that you are able to change a person's mind? How do we get people to think outside the box and get them to not just fall into the trap of just kind of unbelievable things? So here we go. 10 myths about immigration. Most immigrants are here illegally. With so much controversy around the issues of undocumented immigrants, it's easy to overlook the fact that most of the foreign-born people living in the United States have followed the rules and have permission to be here. Of the more than 31 million foreign-born people living in the United States in 2009, about 20 million were either citizens or legal residents. Of those who did not have authorization to be here, about 45% entered the country legally and then let their papers expire. Myth number 2. It's just as easy to enter the country legally today as it was when my ancestors arrived. Well, ask students when their ancestors immigrated and if they know what the entry requirements were at the time. For about the first 100 years, the United States had an open immigration system that allowed any able-bodied immigrant in, explains immigration historian David Reimers. The biggest obstacle would be that immigrants faced was getting here. Today, there are many rules about who may enter the country and stay legally. Under current policy, many students' immigrant ancestors who arrived between 1790 and 1924 would not be allowed in today. And I just want you to sit down and think about that factually. Number 3, there's a way to enter the country legally for anyone who wants to get in line. Okay, so I'm going to ask y'all, do you know the rules to enter the country legally and stay here to work? The simple answer is that there is no line for most very poor people with few skills to stand in and gain permanent U.S. residency. Generally, gaining permission to live and work in the United States is limited to people who, 1, are highly trained in a skill that is in short supply here, 2, are escaping political persecution, or 3, joining close family that are already here. Number 4, my ancestors learned English, but today's immigrants refuse. All right, well, we should find out how long it took their ancestors to stop using their first language. Earlier immigrant groups held on to their cultures fiercely, notes Reimers. When the United States entered the First World War in 1917, there were over 700 German language newspapers, yet German immigration had peaked in the 1870s. While today's immigrants may speak their first language at home, 2/3 of those older than 5 speak English well or very well, according to research by the independent, nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute. And the demand for adult ESL instruction in the United States far outstrips available classes. Here, I'll add, guys, that in my school in Texas, we had an ESL teacher that taught students not in a bilingual classroom. The teacher spoke English and had to help teach students that learned Arabic or Malayalam or Spanish or French, German, you name it, that came into this country. So I can attest to that truth. All right, number 5. Today's immigrants don't want to blend in and become Americanized. Well, what does it mean to blend into American society? In 2010, about 500,000 immigrants became naturalized citizens. They had to overcome obstacles like getting here, finding a job, overcoming language barriers, paying naturalization fees, dealing with a famously lethargic immigration bureaucracy, and taking a written citizenship test. Well, this is not how the behavior of people who take becoming American lightly. Okay, so these are people who have to go over several steps in order to actually become citizens. The reality is that the typical pattern of assimilation in the United States has remained steady, says Reimers. The first generation struggled with English and didn't learn it. The second was bilingual, and the third can't talk to their grandparents. If anything, the speed of assimilation is faster today than any other time in our past, mainly because of public education and mass media. Meaning that people who are coming here from other countries, y'all, are assimilating or becoming more like your general American population. Number 6, immigrants take good jobs from Americans. Okay, this is another myth. What kinds of jobs are you thinking immigrants are taking? According to the Immigration Policy Center, a nonpartisan group, research indicates that there's little connection between immigrant labor and unemployment rates of native-born workers. Now, here in the United States, 2 trends, better education and aging population, have resulted in a decrease in the number of Americans willing or available to take low-paying jobs. Between 2000 and 2005, the supply of low-skilled American-born workers slipped by 1.8 million. That is significant. So to fill the void, employers often hire immigrant workers. One of the consequences, unfortunately, is that it is easier for unscrupulous employers to exploit this labor source and pay immigrants less, not provide benefits, and ignore worker safety laws. On an economic level, Americans benefit from relatively low process on food and other goods produced by undocumented immigrant labor. 6.7 million job openings, November 2018, and only 85,000 work visas granted each year. Myth number 7, undocumented immigrants bring crime. Now, where do we hear this, guys? Nationally, since 1994, the violent crime rate has declined 34% and the property crime rate has fallen 26%, even as the number of undocumented immigrants has doubled. According to the Conservative Americans Majority Foundation, crime rates during the period of 1999 to 2006 were lowest in states with highest immigration growth rates. During that period, the total crime rate fell 14% in the 19 top immigration states, compared to only 7% in the other 31. Truth is, foreign-born people in America, whether they are naturalized citizens, permanent residents, or undocumented, are incarcerated at a much lower rate than native-born Americans, according to the National Institution of Corrections. Myth number 8, undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes, but still get benefits. Oh my goodness. Well, what are some ways that Americans pay taxes, as in income tax and sales tax? Okay. Undocumented immigrants pay taxes every time they buy gas, clothes, or new appliances. They also contribute to funding, whether they buy or rent a house or rent an apartment. The Social Security Administration estimates that half to 3/4 of undocumented immigrants pay federal, state, and local taxes, including $6 billion and $7 billion in Social Security taxes for benefits they will never get. They can receive schooling and emergency medical care, but not welfare or food stamps. So think about that, okay? Number 9, the United States is being overrun by immigrants like never before, okay? Why would somebody think this? As a percentage of the U.S. population, the historic high actually came in 1900, when the foreign-born constituted nearly 20% of our population. Today, about 12% of the population is foreign-born. Since the start of the recession in 2008, the number of undocumented immigrants coming into the country had actually dropped. Many people also accuse immigrants of having anchor babies, children who allow the whole family to stay. Well, according to the U.S. Constitution, a child born on U.S. soil is automatically an American citizen. Well, that is true. But immigration judges will not keep immigrant parents in the United States just because their children are U.S. citizens. Between 1998 and 2007, the federal government deported 108,000 foreign-born parents whose children had been born here. These children must wait until they are 21 before they can petition to allow their parents to join them in the United States. That process is long and difficult. In reality, there is no such thing as an anchor baby. And last, number 10, anyone who enters the country illegally is a criminal. Does someone who jaywalks or who doesn't feed a parking meter their coins to park, are they considered criminal? Only very serious misbehavior is generally considered criminal in our legal system. Violations of less serious laws are usually civil matters and are tried in civil courts. People accused of crimes are tried in criminal court and can be imprisoned. Now, federal immigration law says that unlawful presence in the country is a civil offense and is, therefore, not a crime. The punishment is deportation. However, some states, like Arizona, are trying to criminalize an immigrant's mere presence. So, I want you to consider all 10 of these myths, guys, and then go back to your slides and answer those questions, okay? What are your general thoughts about this? All of this is entirely factual information. So really, your text analysis today is all about your feelings, your ideas that come from what these facts represent. Have you ever heard any of these myths? And what do you think that says about people that believe them? These responses are entirely your own. But I want you to consider whether or not facts like this ever do change people's minds. The argument is made and it is valid, it is sound, like we talked about in our notes. So why is it that so many people tend to be in disbelief? All right, y'all. I hope you enjoy continuing to get into the social justice unit. If you have questions, please email me.